I was sitting in the third row when I heard a man explain to 200 strangers how he had saved something with my hands. The coverlet was up on the screen behind him, blown up 8 feet tall, every thread I knew by heart. He pointed to the corner where the weave had come apart, and he said,
"This is where the real work happened."
He was right about that. He was wrong about whose work it was. I did not stand up. I did not make a sound. I want to be honest with you about that, because the person telling you this story is not the person who was sitting in that chair. That woman had learned, over 11 years, to be very quiet. Stay with me, because what I did with the silence after that night is the only part of this worth remembering. His name is Neil. He was my husband. On the stage that night, he was introduced as one of the finest textile conservators in New England, and the room believed it. And honestly, for a long time, so did I. The coverlet behind him was a 19th century jacquard weave, indigo and cream, woven and signed by a professional weaver in 1847. The year stitched right into the border, the way those old craftsmen used to sign their work, because back then a maker put their name on the thing they made, and nobody thought that was strange. It had come to us torn along one edge. The foundation thread snapped. 200 years of weight, finally pulling it apart. I had repaired it over 4 months. I remember the night the tension finally held. 2 in the morning, a single lamp, my back aching, because I sat there and cried a little from relief and told no one. Neil was asleep upstairs. And now he was on a stage, describing my 2 a.m. as if he had lived it. Before I take you back to the beginning, because you deserve the beginning, I want to say something to you directly. If you have ever done the work and watched someone else take the name for it, you already know the specific weight I am describing. It isn't loud. It's the quietest theft there is. And I made this channel a place where those stories get to be told with dignity, without shouting, without cruelty. If you carry a story like that, I would be honored to hear it. You can send it to me privately at vellumoflife@gmail.com. Every name gets changed. Every city gets changed. Anything that could identify you is transformed before a single word is published. You never have to be afraid of being found here. And if it feels right, subscribe and stay. I share these stories through the week, and I like knowing you're out there. Now, let me take you back, all the way to a kitchen table and a woman who tried to warn me in the only language she had. My mother, Doreen, sewed for a living before I was born. Not dresses, men's suits, in a tailoring shop on the west side of Providence, one of a dozen women bent over machines in a room with no name on the door. She was fast. She was precise. And in 31 years there, not one jacket
ever left that shop with her name anywhere on it. The label read the tailor's name. The tailor was a man who could not sew a straight buttonhole to save his life. She never said that was unfair. My mother did not have the word unfair in her vocabulary the way I have it in mine. What she had instead was a habit she passed to me before I was 10 years old. She would take my small hands in hers and show me how to sew 2 tiny stitches into the selvage, the finished edge of a piece of cloth. 2 stitches close together in a thread almost the same color as the fabric. You had to know to look for them. You had to know they were there.
That's you. That's how the cloth knows whose hands touched it. Nobody can take the edge from you.
I sewed those 2 stitches into everything I mended for 20 years. And then I married Neil, and somewhere in the first year, I stopped. I met Neil at a conservation workshop. He was charming in the specific way of a man who is very good at the front of the room and less interested in the back of it. He could talk to a museum board for an hour and leave them feeling like they had been let in on a secret. I could not do that. I could sit for 6 hours under a magnifier and rebuild a broken weave, thread by thread, and forget to eat. So when we opened the studio together, the division felt natural, obvious even. He met the clients, he wrote the proposals, he stood in the museums. I did the work. Early on, he told me something, and he was not wrong exactly. A lot of studios do this.
You sign in the name of the studio. It's cleaner that way. It's how the field works.
I believed him. Why wouldn't I? I didn't want the front of the room. I wanted the loop and the lamp and the moment when a dead thing came back to life under my hands. I told myself the arrangement was fair because I had chosen it. It took me 11 years to notice that I had never actually been given the choice. My mother did not like Neil. She never insulted him. She did something worse, from my point of view at the time. She watched him. Every holiday, every dinner, she would sit across the table and watch the way he talked over me, the way he answered questions that were asked of me. And at the end of the night, at the door, she would say the same thing.
You're going to disappear inside that man, Frances.
I hated that sentence. I heard it as an attack on him and underneath on me, as if she were saying I was weak, as if she were saying I would let it happen because I was the kind of woman things happened to. We fought about it. There were 2 years we barely spoke. I understand now that she wasn't attacking me. She was reporting from the future. She had already lived my exact life, 1 generation earlier, in a room full of women whose names were never on the label. She was trying to hand me the map out. She just didn't have gentle words for it, because no one had ever handed her any. She was warning me. I heard an insult That is the thing I would give almost anything to go back and correct. The Coverlet returned to the studio 14 months after the museum event. Routine. It needed reassessment for an insurance revaluation, and the protocol was strict. The object could not be reassessed without its complete treatment dossier. Every note, every photograph, every record made during the original work. Neil was traveling. He asked me to pull the file and have it ready. So I went to the flat archive drawers at the back of the studio, and I found the folder, and I sat down at my own workbench to check that it was complete. And I opened it. I want to describe exactly what I saw, because it matters that nothing in that folder was a secret. Nothing was hidden. Nothing had been locked away from me. It had simply always been there, and I had simply never once had a reason to open it, because I was the one who filled it. There were 11 years of my field notes. My handwriting, my dated entries. Thread count in the failed region, 42 per inch. Foundation snapped along the eastern selvage. Attempting bridge repair, single strand, matched dye lot. 2 in the morning, that note. I remembered writing it. And clipped in front of every batch of my notes, was a typed treatment report. Clean, formal, signed at the bottom. Signed, Neil Ashby, Principal Conservator. Page after page. 11 years. My hands underneath. His name on top. I did not cry. I've thought about why, and I think it's because crying is what you do when something is taken from you suddenly. This wasn't sudden. This had been happening the entire time, in plain sight, in a drawer I walked past every single day. I sat very still for a long time. Then I did the first deliberate thing I had done in years. I took out my phone and I photographed every page. I want to be careful here, because this is the part where a different kind of story would have me scream, or confront him at the door, or burn something down. I didn't want to burn anything down. I had spent my whole life saving things other people had given up on. I wasn't about to start destroying. What I understood, sitting at that bench, was very simple and very cold and completely clear. The proof was already mine. It had always been mine. My handwriting predated his signature on every single page. The notes came first. The report came after. Any person who knew how to read a dated document could see the order of events. I didn't need to take anything from Neil. I just needed to stop letting him keep what was never his. I closed the folder. I set it back in the drawer exactly as I had found it, squared to the edge. I finished preparing the coverlet for reassessment, the way I always did, professionally, completely. And that night, for the first time in 11 years, before I wrapped the piece, I sewed 2 tiny stitches into its selvage. 2 stitches, close together, in a thread almost the same color as the cloth. You would have to know to look for them. You would have to know they were there. I did not confront Neil. I did not tell him what I had found. I want you to sit with that, because I know how it sounds, and I know that some part of you wants me to have thrown the folder in his face. But a confrontation would have given him a conversation, and a conversation is a thing a man like Neil can win. He could explain. He could reframe. He could make me the unreasonable one, the way he had made me the quiet one, slowly, over years, until I forgot I had ever been loud. I didn't want to win an argument. I wanted the record to be true. And the record does not care about arguments. The record only cares about evidence and dates. So I worked, quietly, the way this channel is named for. No shouting, just paper. Over the next 14 months, I did the least dramatic things you can imagine. I recovered my original field notebooks from the studio archive, the physical ones, spiral-bound, in my hand, water-stained, real. I made a second, private set of copies and kept them somewhere safe. I found the fiber sample envelopes I had labeled over the years, each one in my writing, each one dated. I pulled the photographs, hundreds of them, of work in progress, time-stamped by the camera, showing my hands, my bench, my lamp. And then I did the thing I had been telling myself for 11 years I wasn't ready for. I applied for professional credentialing in my own name, the full peer-reviewed process, a portfolio of documented treatments submitted to the National Conservation Body, evaluated by conservators who had never heard of Neil Ashby and did not care whose studio the work came out of. They cared about one thing. Could the applicant demonstrate the work was hers? I could. I had 11 years of dated proof that it was. And every single object that passed through my hands in those 14 months got 2 stitches in the selvage. Every one. I wasn't hiding anymore. I wasn't announcing anything either. I was just putting myself back into my own work, thread by thread, the way my mother taught me before I was 10 years old. I called Doreen one evening, near the end of it. I hadn't told her any of it yet. She was 71 by then, her own hands finally still. I didn't say you were right. I couldn't get there yet. I said, I started signing my work again, Mom. There was a long pause on the line, and then my mother, who never cried, said in a voice I had never heard her use,
Good. It's about time the cloth knew you were back.
The reversal, when it came, did not come from me. The museum that owned the coverlet launched a provenance audit. This is an ordinary thing museums do. They periodically verify the full history of an object, including who has conserved it and when. because a piece is only as trustworthy as its paper trail. The curator running it was Dr. Estelle Boone. I had never met her. She was doing her job, the way I had always done mine, carefully, with a loupe, paying attention to the edge of things. She had 2 sets of records for the same coverlet, the studio's signed reports, and in the museum's own conservation intake file, the copies of the original field notes that had been submitted with the object years earlier. 2 handwritings, 1 story that did not line up. But Dr. Boone did not decide anything based on handwriting alone. Handwriting can be argued about. She did what conservators do. She went to the object. She put the coverlet under magnification, and she examined the repair itself, the actual bridge of thread across the broken foundation, the work I had done at 2 in the morning. And she saw what a trained eye sees, the direction of the stitch, the lay of the thread, the specific, unmistakable slant of a mend sewn by a left hand. I am left-handed. I have been my whole life. My mother used to worry it would slow me down at the machine, and it never did. Neil is right-handed. A right-handed conservator cannot produce a left-handed stitch any more than he can sign someone else's handwriting under a magnifier. The hand leaves its mark in the work, whether you sign it or not. And then, at the finished edge of the coverlet, Dr. Boone found 2 tiny stitches in the selvage. She didn't know yet what they meant, but she is a careful woman, and she wrote them down. 2 supplementary stitches, worked edge, maker's mark, unidentified. Unidentified, for now. There was no scene. I want you to understand that. Nobody screamed. Neil was never dragged in front of a board and unmasked. That isn't how this ends. And honestly, it isn't how anything real ends. What happened was quieter and far heavier. Dr. Boone reached out, not to Neil, to the studio, and requested that the conservator of record verify their identity through professional credentials as part of standard audit procedure. Neil held no such credential in his own name. I did. I had earned it 11 months earlier in my own name, on the strength of my own documented work. I did not accuse him. I simply answered the museum's request. I sent my credential, my dated field notes, and 1 photograph, my hands, my bench, that coverlet, 4 years before the night he stood on the stage. The museum did not need me to say another word. The paper said all of it. Ashby Textile Conservation came off the museum's roster of approved conservators. And the object label on the mount beneath the coverlet was quietly corrected. Conservation, Francis Doyle. My name, my mother's name, the name on the label at last. I have my own studio now. It is small. It has 1 very good lamp, and a magnifier that cost more than my first car, and a door with my own name painted on the glass. Not gold, nothing showy, just clean black letters that say what is true.
Neil and I are not together. That part was quieter than you'd think, too. When the person who built you smaller is no longer in the room, you don't so much leave them as simply stop shrinking. And there's suddenly a great deal more of you than the room was built to hold.
I don't tell the story about the stage very often. Not because it hurts, because it isn't the point anymore. The point was never what he took. The point was that it was never actually gone. It was in a drawer the whole time, in my own handwriting, waiting for me to be ready to read it. My mother visited the studio last month. 72 now, slower on the stairs. She picked up a piece I had just finished, a christening gown, 100 years old, torn at the hem. She turned it over in her hands, the way she has turned cloth over her whole life, and she ran her thumb along the finished edge. She found the 2 stitches. Of course she did. She's the one who taught me where to look. She didn't say anything. Neither did I. We just sat together at my bench in the good lamplight, 2 women who had spent their lives putting broken things back together, working in silence. And for the first time in either of our lives, the silence wasn't something being done to us. It was ours. We chose it. And it was enough. If your work has ever been signed with someone else's name, if someone tried to make you smaller than your own hands, I hope you remember this. They can take the label. They can never take the edge. Nobody can take the edge from you. Thank you for spending this time with me. If this story found something in you, send me yours, vellumoflife@gmail.com, and I'll keep it safe. Every name changed, every story treated with the dignity it earned. Until the next one.